Many children's museums around the country have closed due to COVID, but here in the Lowcountry, our Children's Museum of the Lowcountry is still open. I talked with Executive Director Nichole Myles for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Nichole Myles, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much for having me, Quintin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Obviously, you're the Executive Director of the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry, which is right around the corner from where I am currently. And I want to go to some developing news, which is really, really good news. The Metro News says this, quote, the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry recently announced that they're holding a virtual New Year's Eve celebration on this Thursday, December 31st. Registered families can tune in for an exclusive live stream complete with music, stories, activities, and crafts. And of course, the ball drop at noon. It's so exciting. Let me ask you this. Why the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry? Why a virtual New Year's Eve celebration?
Well, so at the Children's Museum, we have been doing a live New Year's Eve celebration for the last several years. Our philosophy is that children learn best through play and experiences, and that helps unlock their potential, but also that we want children to actively participate in community traditions. And something like New Year's Eve has become such a big deal for those of us as adults, but if you're 6, staying up until midnight may not be a great idea either for you or for your family, right? So this is actually something that happens across the country with children's museums, is that we host a party at noon. In past years, our attendance at our New Year's Eve ball drop has been around 1,100 or 1,200 people. Wow. In the age of COVID, that is decidedly not safe. When we really looked at what we wanted to do, we didn't want to have a limited socially distanced thing where we were not including everybody, because it's also very important to us that we include everybody in the community. And so we decided to build this virtual New Year's Eve party where wherever you are, you can get your craft box that we've sold, and you can gather around your device and participate in the songs and the crafts and the activities that you would do if you were in the museum, and then see that ball drop happen virtually. And I'm really proud of how we were able to set this up, Quintin, because what we did was we sold boxes of either for 2 people or 4 people, but for every one of those boxes we sold, we turned around and donated one to one of our warm welcome families or Museums for All families who are under-resourced. And we know, especially in the pandemic, there are so many families adversely affected, and no one should miss out on celebrations and traditions because of that.
Absolutely. And how many families were able to get those craft boxes?
So we have about 110 of them out.
Wow. That is amazing. Why is it so important for, obviously, your organization, a nonprofit organization, to give back to the underserved when you guys are really underserved right now because of COVID?
Yeah, it's been a tough year to really stand strong in our mission, because we are experiencing about a 75% drop in our revenues. As other attraction-based nonprofits, which is what I would qualify us as, the vast majority of our operating budget comes from feet through the door. But we have always been an organization that is committed to making sure that everybody can get through the door, regardless of whether or not they can pay and access that play experience. And, as a community serving organization, if you're going to be true to your mission, it is the hardest hit folks that you need to be standing up for no matter what. And we have seen a quadrupled number of our Museums for All families. These are families who are receiving SNAP, TANF, or WIC. Even though we are reduced in our services to only 2 days a week, we're only open on the weekends right now for the general public, the number of Museums for All families coming through the door has quadrupled for us. And that says everything we need to know about where our families are in this community, doesn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
That they are being hit hard. And at no other time can I think of it being more important than in a crisis like this, that if you are the nonprofit in your community who serves young children and families, that you step up no matter how difficult.
With the reduced services, obviously on the weekends now, what can the average person expect when they walk through the door on Saturdays and Sundays?
Sure. So one of the great things that did happen at the beginning of the pandemic is we were under construction. And so we have been in a capital campaign called Make and Believe for the last couple of years. And we've been renovating the interior of this building. So we are right around the corner from each other. I'm in an 1859 historic train shed that didn't used to have ceilings and walls. In 2019, we fixed up all of that. And in 2020, we put in 4 new exhibition spaces.
Wow.
So we have a brand new maker space called Bright Lab, where you can get your hands on tools and see 3D printers and all kinds of great stuff. We have a place called Air Everywhere now, where you can make your own paper airplane and launch it, or experience some bottle rocket launches and some vertical flying. We renovated entirely our new toddler space and moved it. And we put in a performing arts space for the first time called the Speak Lab Studio, where children can really round out their arts experiences. So when you come in, you're going to get these new experiences, as well as some familiar old favorites like our pirate ship and our grocery store that have long been favorites. We have also reduced our capacity dramatically. So we are capping our attendance at 20% of what the building will hold. We are still doing that. And we have set up what we call play dates. So you can come in on a Saturday morning from 9:30 to 11:30 for a 2-hour play date. There will never be more than 90 people in there with you. So our building will hold 450 people, but we scale it at 90. You will see, you will walk over shoe sanitizing mats. You will see us use UV light to sanitize some of our equipment. We even help children shop in our store, put puppets on their hands by first putting sock gloves on, because small children don't put their fingers through things easy, but we want to make sure that everybody is safe. We are a downtown Charleston organization, and we are masking ourselves, as well as making sure that all of our visitors who are over age 2 are masking or shielding as well. And we help families a lot with that language and modeling of how to make sure children do it. So we've been very successful so far with our protocols, but safety is our key priority to make sure that when children come in, they're getting a world-class experience.
And what's that language of modeling right now when you're trying to talk to kids about COVID?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. In addition to being open on the weekends, we are offering programs as well. So during the week, right now, it's Winter Wonderland Camp. And so we have families and we have children in without their families. And a lot of that discussion is about how we help each other in community. Children like to take part in community, and we don't condescend to children, so we definitely talk to them about these are important. There are germs, there's a virus out there, and we can't see it, and we can't touch it, and we can't smell it, but we know we also shouldn't come anywhere near it, and there are certain special things we need to do for it. One of them is we wear these masks. And so we really encourage them to ask their questions about that. Why can't you see something? What else can't you see? And so we do a lot of leading questions. We don't fill in the blanks for children. We let them ask those questions, and we lead them through the process of how they can discover what's happening. And at the end of the day, children want to help. They want to be part of their community. They want to be part of the safety of this. And so they become readily able to not only comply themselves, but to help their friends do the same thing. And they learn, also not to be frightened, though. Children still need to be children. And so, one of the things we don't do, when we sit at our tables, on the rare occasions we are sitting, because we're a moving, active organization, when we sit with our camps, we do use acrylic dividers. We make sure when we take off our masks to eat, we're doing those things. But when children are playing, we are letting them play. We've installed those safety protocols, lots of sanitizing, hand washing, sock gloves, masking. Right. But then we make sure our children play. And when they do that, they often play through their own social stories about how they are feeling about COVID, and it helps advance their social emotional learning, which our children also desperately need in this time.
Absolutely. And you talked earlier, obviously, about renovations at the Children's Museum of the Lowcountry. With the campaign, how much did that cost you have cost you all thus far?
So the campaign altogether will be about an $8 million campaign. We have been angling for some tax credits that we hopefully can get to be able to complete that campaign. We've not secured those tax credits. So right now we've raised about $2.5 million with another $2 million or so pledged to us. So a little more than the halfway point. If we get our tax credits, that campaign will be complete. And we'll be also building an indoor-outdoor pavilion in the backyard. A lot of folks are familiar with our fenced-in back area. That'll be getting an entire renovation with an outdoor water area, an outdoor climbing area, and something called Port Go Go Go, which will be all dedicated to the careers here around the ports. And so we're very excited about what that could do. Right now, we have put a little more than $2 million directly into the building itself for a lot of deferred maintenance issues with a historic building, as you might imagine, leaking roofs and protecting historic brick and doing a lot of those things. So the first round of renovations was decidedly not exciting for our children and families, but very exciting for us to make sure we had sealed walls and sealed roof line and all of that. Now you can really start to see, because of these new experiences that are being brought in, you can really start to see them. And exhibits, folks don't often understand, so I'm glad I get a chance to address it, how expensive children's museum in particular interactives are, exhibit pieces are. And I kind of explain it to people like this. A lot of you have you have swing sets in your backyard, right? I had one of those metal swing sets growing up, the kind that when you swung, the chains would kind of lift up out of the ground, right? Yes. Now, there's a reason that those swing sets don't happen in your park, right? You don't have that swing set in your park. And the cost difference between the swing set my papa bought for me at Sears and the swing set that they put in the park around the corner was dramatically different, because it was meant to last for years, and it was meant to really, frankly, be abused, right? It's really meant to do that. And museum equipment is the same way. Not only does it need to work every time someone uses it properly, but it still needs to work when they don't use it properly. And, children are explorers, and so they want to take things apart and they want to lean on things. And, you want to make sure that you don't want anything fragile in a building like us. And that takes a lot of research and development. It takes a lot of customization. And it takes, frankly, a lot of expense, but it's so well worth it to have something that, every time you do visit us, you can launch your vertical flyer and know it's going to work. Because it's a big disappointment to go through that whole process and then walk up and start that thing and have it not work.
Right. And you talk about those tax breaks. What is the typical tax break for your organization?
So as a nonprofit, we are a tax-free organization, but there are tax credits called new market tax credits for development in certain areas, of which we happen to be in one, as well as historic tax credits. And so our tax credit amount is based on the total of our project as well as our location. The interesting thing about our tax credits is, unlike other like corporations and things, these are not guaranteed tax credits. So you're in a little bit of a competition with other projects out there, and investors get to decide whether or not they want to take up your project, whether it meets their criteria, whether it's what they're looking for. So we remain hopeful. We have made it to the final round 2 years running now, but have not been picked up. And some of that is the scale of our building. We're a pretty modest children's museum in terms of square footage, although we serve a really robust number. In fact, the Citadel did an economic impact study for us and discovered that we are the most visited per square footage children's museum anywhere in the Southeast. So we have a huge reach, but we have a really modest building, and that makes, we need just the right investor for somebody to get those tax credits. But our industry right now is 56% closed completely. So children's museums across the country, 56% of them are closed, and we are not one of them. So I am nothing if not a relentless optimist. We're going to get those tax credits, and we're going to build that pavilion, and we're going to bring it to Charleston for sure.
And what is the total of the project?
About $8 million.
Okay. Just as you just mentioned. Okay, let me go to some other things, because you said this too. Myles, obviously, in the news article, described the difficult reality for a place where kids can be kids and where hands-on learning can, in the name of game. How can kids be kids and still get the hands-on learning in the midst of COVID?
It has really been an interesting challenge to adapt to, but I'm really proud that we've done it. So one of the things that's happening, a lot of our experiences, Quintin, actually happen outside of the building. And a lot of folks don't realize that. But in 2019, of the nearly 200,000 children and families we served, 68,000 of them were actually served through activities outside of the museum. And that number outreach is actually growing again for us. And so one of the things that we had done in the museum several years ago was this little project called Brown Bag STEM. And it's just what you might think of. It was a little lunch bag, and the kids got all their materials, and there was a STEM challenge inside, and we facilitate a story. Well, it turned out that that was exactly the kind of activity we needed for a pandemic, because it was everything you needed. You could still have your hands on, you could still have your guided learning, but everything is individual. And right now, heading into 2021, we're going to be distributing about 800 of those kits a week. Every week on a different theme. We started taking them into Mary Ford, one of our Head Start partners. We love the work they're doing over there, and Ruth Taylor's a board member at CML and a longtime supporter of ours, and so we've been collaborating with them, and the kids get their own individual pieces. That's been a really key for us, is that we've had to move away from the communal and kind of into those individual portioned things. Volunteers for us roll 3 yards of tape on 1/3 of a plastic straw over and over and over again to drop them into those bags.
Right.
And there's a lot of prep that goes into that, but really that's how kids can do it. It's if you're willing to sort of think a little differently about what that hands-on experience can still be, and honor that kids learn best by doing, you can modify. And so those brown bag STEM programs, adding things like putting sock gloves on kiddos. If you come and paint with us, you're going to get an individual set of paint cups and an individual set of paint brushes, where you might used to come in and just sit down and grab whatever was there.
Right.
We don't do that anymore, but we have found that we can still make these really important interactive learning experiences individualized for children, and then recollect those materials, fully sanitize them or dispose of them if they're recycled materials, and start again.
And how many materials do you actually recollect?
It really depends on the activity, but for something like brown bag STEM, those are fully disposable.
Right.
For things like our art room, we take back in our paint cups, we take back in our paint brushes. In our Bright Lab, we have several circuit sets. One of them is called Little Bits.
Wow.
We recollected those after they've been touched. So staff here are very hard at work. As soon as somebody's using those, we recollect them, we take them to the back table, and we actually put a UV light over them. We do the same thing with our puppets. We recollect them and we put UV light over them to sanitize them, and then we get them right back out. So it's meant, obviously, the expense of how you sanitize those kinds of things, and it's meant the expense of doubling or tripling the amount of items we actually have on hand, because we want to consistently have sanitized items out. We don't want anybody having to wait for those, and we need to have items in the sanitizing queue. And so that's kind of the process that's happening all the time.
And what other things are you modifying when it comes to that?
In terms of cleaning?
Oh, no, the programs.
Oh, we've modified so many programs. So it's also been taking our pop-up Tinker Shop on the road. So again, sort of years ago, we had this idea that we wanted to have a mobile play. We know that downtown is a wonderful place in Charleston, but it isn't always easy to get to. We know that our city has infrastructure challenges and certainly cost of parking challenges for families. And we thought, well, if you can't get to the museum, maybe the museum should come to you. And so a couple of years ago, we were able to invest in a 24-foot trailer and work on something called the Pop-Up Tinker Shop, which is all mobile play. Right. It took us a while to get that on the road. And originally, we wanted folks to walk into that trailer. And then, middle of this year, we went, well, we don't want folks to walk into that trailer. We're going to modify everything again so it rolls out and we can set it up. And we've been driving all over the Lowcountry, doing these pop-up play events for families completely for free, largely in part with a partnership with our First Steps partners, Berkeley County, Dorchester County, and Charleston County, where we could come out and set up in a common space for them, roll out all those play equipment, and really interact again as that, cleaning, sanitizing, playing, all of those things. But especially with those families, there's some resource issues there. So we've also been able to do things like distribute masks to families, make sure they're getting sanitizer, partner with other groups who are making sure they're getting food or diapers or other things that they might need. And that has been a great gift. We've also upped our virtual game. And that's not easy when you're a very small organization. We didn't have a lot of technology and certainly not a lot of new technology at our fingertips. But we've upped our virtual game. So for the first few months, we had literally 2 or 3 videos go out every single day with different activities for families to do at home. They're all in our library now. Our Brown Bag STEM program I alluded to earlier has virtual lessons that will go out when we cannot get inside of schools. And also we'll be doing something on the virtual learning days for the City of Charleston schools, where we will be providing a virtual lesson and a Brown Bag STEM to all of the children on e-learning days when schools are closed, so that when they're at home, they have a hands-on curricularly aligned activity that we are providing.
And what are those other resource problems that you all have to tackle?
It's been a pretty robust series of logistical problems in terms of what you need to get your hands on. That we were a very small staff to start with. We're serving about 200,000 children and families a year with 15 full-time staff. Unfortunately, we are now at 8.5 full-time staff because such that it is with the results of COVID. And so we have really had to be able to pivot creatively. A lot of folks have, expanded their jobs, which is sort of the nonprofit joke, is that there's a line in all of our job descriptions that says other duties as assigned. And we have definitely taken on those other duties as assigned. But it has been just raw infrastructure. We don't have a lot of new computers here. We don't have a lot of high-end sound equipment or any of that. We were incredibly blessed through a friendship. Somebody volunteered for us to actually record our New Year's Eve celebration. And so we're getting this completely polished, incredibly well put together piece that came through volunteering.
Great.
And that is, those are the kinds of gifts that you really just can't. We obviously have been hurt financially, but the kind of gifts where somebody steps up and gives their time and talents to us have just been immeasurable in terms of how we feel about those things.
And I know might be redundant, but you told News 2 this quote: a lot of people don't realize that we are a nonprofit organization, but we're primarily funded through our revenue source. So that length of closure had been very difficult for us financially. What's your revenue source right now?
It is absolutely still the income that's coming in through the feet through the door, so dramatically reduced. We stopped offering our membership program because we didn't feel that we could honor it, as well as, unlimited membership for a year, but we're only open 2 days a week. We were taking a massive hit there. And so it's been our earned income plus our donations and grants that we have worked really hard to get. But it has left a massive gap. We are about a $1.6 million operating institution annually. We are heading into 2021 having lost more than 2/3 of that budget. Wow. So it's a significant number. We applied for and got a PPP loan earlier in the year. We're very excited about the new legislation because it has a shuttered venue provision in it, which is around the performing arts and museums. Right. Those groups are supposed to have some allotted money. One of the biggest challenges was, even though we provided services, we opened our camp programs in June when families were sent back to work. We really aimed at working families. We put our scholarships in. We ran School Zeum when school was closed virtually. We facilitated virtual school. Comparatively, from a donor perspective and from a grantor funder perspective, we weren't food, shelter, or medicine. And that was a massive driver of who received funds. And so it was sort of a double hit. We lost our income that we would normally earn that would support us, and we lost qualification on a level of grants and funders, foundations, and things that would have supported us because they shifted their focus to food, shelter, medicine, which of course we supported. Right. We've also seen, some really wonderful shifts in the nonprofit community and philanthropy around equity, making sure that there is a support for equity organizations. We love that as well. We did see a reduction from one group who said, we've taken this part of our funds and we've decided we want to go through, we've not funded these smaller equity, especially minority run nonprofits, minority focused nonprofits. And we went, there wasn't a word we could say about that, because our hearts are there as well. We want to make sure we're about lifting up entire communities. We're about that. And so we were very, very happy philanthropically to see that shift happen. We would love to see those organizations say we're going to put more money towards philanthropy rather than saying we're going to divide the current pie into smaller pieces, and good luck. But we were really happy to, it's a two-sided coin. You're very happy to see organizations and community members step up. We do need food, shelter, medicine. We do need more equity in philanthropy. We need all of those things. Also for organizations like ours that are informal learning, arts-focused organizations, we've had the floor fall out from underneath us. And in terms of finances, getting back up from that is going to be very difficult and long term. I think folks don't realize also for the Children's Museum in particular here in Charleston, it's not true in every community, but in our community, we're a fully private nonprofit, which means we do not receive municipal funds at all. Right. We are not tax supported. We are not any of those things. And so everything we get is what we can earn and provide. And then we're going to turn it right back out into the community every time.
Yeah. And what's the general total income for your organization?
So generally we would operate at about a $1.7 million organization. That's actually doubled in the 5 years that I've been here. So when I came, we were about $970,000. So we were on track to fully double. Heading into 2021, we are probably reset back to where we were 5 years ago. Yeah. Back to that under $1 million in revenue, depending on how fast we can get back on our feet and how fast we can start welcoming more families in. We're very committed to some new cutting edge ideas as well about how we can bring services to families and how we can bring new experiences that may drive revenue. But for a long time, we're going to be looking towards donors and philanthropy in a way we haven't had to look at them before, because the economic impact of even our community, our greater community is hurting. So this is not the time to raise our own prices or make it harder to access us, even though we need that income. We're going to have to look at philanthropy and start making a case for supporting more robust support of informal education and performing arts venues who've been really damaged by the length of time we've gone through COVID.
And I have to run to my 10:30 interview with Irv Baden with the Bridge Run, but let me ask you this. Who are those donors that you are committed to right now?
Who are they?
Yes, ma'am.
So our major donors, we have some major corporate donors as well as some private donors. So our largest corporation donors, Boeing Foundation has been a big supporter of ours. Dominion Energy has been a big supporter. Publix Foods has been a big supporter. They actually put together that grocery store. We're so grateful for those. We've had a variety of family foundations come forward and really support us in terms of our capital work as well. And, we're so grateful for that philanthropy. And I think the best thing that we can do with our philanthropy is, one, stay true to our mission, making sure that we are reaching every single child to unlock their potential, and two, to keep fighting for it. That, this is hard. This has certainly been one of the hardest years I've ever had in nonprofit and education after 24 years, I guess, of being in the field. But we know our value now. We know the importance of what we do. We know that it matters to families to have these safe places to come and unlock potential for their children. And so we are just going to keep fighting for it. And we believe that there are better days ahead. We're going to get some of that attention from some more of those donors and get some help, and we'll be back on our feet.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm going to come back to you in February to ask you some more questions, because I had a list of questions I couldn't even ask.
I'm a talker, sorry.
Oh, no worries. No worries at all. It's a great interview, actually. But Nichole Myles, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much, Quintin, for having me. It was a pleasure, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yes, ma'am. I'll have you back soon.